Title: She dropped 5 stars. It had been weeks since the stars had shifted. As her ship blazed through the dying planet's atmosphere, that was the first thing Karen saw. With breath held fast in the void of conflict, the galaxy had ceased to move. Her palms, wet with blood and perspiration from previous tremors, shook over her bulging tummy. She was running out of time, allies, and gasoline. However, she would not allow the 5 lives, 5 unattainable hopes that were inside of her to perish in the dark. The last of the Nemvasari, a caste of bio-empaths with a hereditary sensitivity to harmony, was Karen. In the past, her people used their touch to cure psychic damage, soothe planetary storms, and balance ecosystems. The Nemvasari were persecuted, imprisoned, and eventually wiped out as the conflict broke out, driven by the Zavari Dominion's desire to subjugate the mind healers, except for her. On Darsa 7, a terraformed mining world on the edge of known space, her pod crashed into the furthest reaches of a human settlement amid a hail of orange sparks and twisted metal. All across the settlement, alarms sounded. Fearful lights flickered. Only a pale, 6-fingered girl with bioluminescent veins emerged from the ruins, groaning gently as something inside of her changed. No war machine, however, crawled from the wreckage. She was contacted first by Dr. Eli Voss. He was a reclusive former army doctor who resided on the outskirts of the human settlement, reluctantly repairing both people and machines. He assumed it was a minor accident or another rogue droid when the call arrived. Instead, he discovered a miracle with bruises. "She's in Vessery," he whispered, wiping the dust from her furrowed brow. "Shouldn't even exist anymore." Despite the objections of the local security, he brought her back to his habdome. "She's in labor," he informed us. "You want to shoot a pregnant girl?" Filtered with recycled eucalyptus and sage, the air inside the dome hummed warm and sterile. Karen's pupils flickered open like suns beneath ice as she stirred on the operating table. Eli's touch made her wince, but when her hand dropped to her stomach, she relaxed, a gesture that all celebs use. Eli scanned her with a scanner. 5 embryos, quicker development. You're days away, Jesus. Perhaps hours. Although Karen didn't speak English, there was a lot of emotion in her voice. After buzzing, Eli's translator implant explained her thought. "They are more than mine. They're seeds, inside our worlds." He blinked. "You're telling me they're genetically engineered?" Slowly, she shook her head. "Selected, from the remnants. 1 from speech, 1 from green, 1 from peace, 1 from remembrance, and," her voice broke, "1 from soul." Another contraction came before he could press her. Her cry reverberated across the metal corridors like a melody. 6 hours later, the delivery started. Eli looped old recordings of Nemvasari anatomy through his HUD and disinfected whatever he could. With every push, Karen's body changed its bioluminescent colors, turning turquoise when she was at ease, crimson when she was in pain, and gold when the kid started to crown. At dawn, the first child arrived, tiny, fragile, with a subtle green glimmer. Its chest gave off a gentle hum, and the metal encircling its fingers repaired wherever they touched. Whispering, "Photosynthetic regenerative," Eli said. "DNA splicing in plants. Amazing." An hour later, the second appeared, its pupils like moving galaxies, its eyes wide open. Eli's recollections of her early years, the massacre of her people, and the journey over the debris fields flashed across her mind as Karen held it. The infant served as a channel for memory transfer, her archive as well as her child. A boy who inhaled water from the birthing pool and wept in a song came in third. Every creature in the room cooed, and Eli realized he could interpret the sound. Adaptation of language. A speaker that is global. He was already babbling in Eli's speech-like tones before changing to imitate Karen's calming clicks. The fourth was quiet, even placid. Karen let out a sigh of relief as she opened her eyes. Translation. Empath, Eli said. There was calm in the room because of the baby. Every machine in her immediate vicinity buzzed in unison. Eli's war-torn muscles relaxed, and his pounding heartbeat calmed. The last birth followed. This time, Karen let out a longer scream. Violet pulsed through her body, an unknown signal. The infant was quiet, motionless, and had dull skin. It didn't weep. It didn't breathe. Karen sobbed while repeatedly muttering its name. Lioran. Lioran. Eli acted quickly, trying to revive him. Weak impulses flickered through the scanner like stars ready to blink. Desperate, he laid the youngster on Karen's chest. A flash of white light erupted from both of them. Eli was flung back. The instruments broke. Alarms went off outside. The pilots of the orbiting spacecraft, Zavari warbirds poised to attack the colony, abruptly disengaged and drifted away, filled with an emotion they were unable to identify. The eyes of the fifth child opened. Karen grinned shakily as she glanced up at Eli. Soul breathes. Weeks went by. Each of the rapidly growing newborns displayed characteristics that no scientist could completely understand. Karen and her offspring were now viewed as miracles by the colony that had once feared her. Human diplomats showed up. They made offers. Access was pleaded for by research teams. Karen turned them all down. They are not weapons, she exclaimed to Eli one evening. They are bridges. He gave a nod. He was starting to believe. He observed how the empath child's presence had caused his own trauma to start to lessen. How where the green-fingered one crawled, crops had started to grow. How arguments between irate men were settled simply by allowing the speaker to ramble. The memory the child started using dreams to communicate. Eli recalled his mother's lullabies, the sound of the waves, and his brother's face, things he had buried. Instead of crying, the toddler watched and shared. However, Lioren, the fifth child, continued to be the most enigmatic. He remained silent. He didn't move much. However, you recalled your finest self when he gazed at you. At one point, a mere look sent Eli to tears for hours. Whispering, "He is everyone who was lost," Karen said. "The weight of soul, given form." She became old quickly, too quickly. It had cost her everything to give birth to them. As the children blossomed, she started to wither. She requested Eli to take her one evening to the colony's edge, where the wind blew gentle lullabies through splintered trees. "I want to die where no death has happened before," she stated. "Let my ending start something." The youngsters flocked around her, each feeling the moment, while Eli observed. They didn't weep. They hummed. A symphony of song, empathy, memory, green light, and soul. She went under the first native tree that the green kid had planted without realizing it had taken root in the foreign soil. And new blossoms, bioluminescent petals that danced with unidentified DNA, appeared from her flesh. They would refer to it as the mother tree years later. Decades went by. The 5 kids dispersed around the galaxy, through invitation rather than conquering. Kirill, the green one, was a healer of poisoned worlds. Now, under her watchful care, planets on the verge of ecological catastrophe flourished. Where the breeze was once stifled by ash, trees flourished. They constructed a cathedral of living vines for her on Verdania Prime. Aelra, the memory child, turned into a living library. People transported their memories, forgotten dreams, lost histories, and vanishing languages across 10 systems. She brought them together in song and gave them sights that caused shattered civilizations to cry and transform. Don, the speaker, used his voice to hush civil battles he had witnessed. He used frequencies that moved people in addition to words. Children are educated to speak Ulrix's dialect, one devoid of hatred, on the moons of Ulrix. Peace accords were centered around Saren, the empath. She made diplomats feel the other person's childhood. As opposing factions grieved and showed forgiveness, she remained silent. Flowers blossomed from her tears. Leorin, too? Leorin was never in charge. He didn't inquire. He just showed up. He would show himself in the heartbeats before the ultimate war or the mass extinction, in the seconds before the demise of the Earth. And gaze. Generals dropped their weapons with a single look. Suicides stepped back from cliffs after just one touch. Planets choose to survive after one tear. Dreaming about her, Karen, who gave birth not just to children but also to a future, Eli Voss passed away in his bed among the stars. A future without conflict, a future without forgetting. He was laid to rest next to the mother tree. 5 stars moved across the sky above him, never remaining motionless. They performed a dance. 4,300 words and extensively enlarged. Do you want this to be adapted for narrative, serialized, or visualized? The blade trembled ever so slightly in her grasp as it hovered inches from his throat. It did not shake out of terror. It was a sense of expectation. Fury. It was genetically passed down for centuries and bred into her bones. After all, she was Emberin, made to be perfect, ruthless, and effective. Human, any final words? She inquired icily. With blood drying over his jawline, the guy shackled to the durasteel pillar lifted his damaged face. He forced a crooked smile despite the split lip and the deepening bruise across his cheek. Yes, he answered in a harsh voice. You're holding it incorrectly. Kalith blinked. She hesitated for 1 second, just one. The alien blade she was holding, a weapon engraved with antiquated circuitry and humming with low, menacing pulses, hung in midair. She growled, "You're making fun of me." "I wish," said the human. "But really, you're not holding on. Instead of using your hips to compensate, you're using your shoulder. The purpose of that edge is to flex with the blow. Instead of flowing with the weapon, you're battling it." She yelled, "I've been trained to use the Anthelion edge since birth." He cocked his head. "Then your training was incorrect." The quiet in the room became tense. A slight buzz of shipboard energy filled the Ravager's Mercy's command chamber around them. Unsure whether to step in or just take in the spectacle, a few of Kalith's best guard observed from the perimeter. Kalith pushed the sword forward till the human's flesh was kissed. His throat had a narrow line of red. He didn't recoil. Rather, he studied her with his eyes fixed on hers, examining her, as if she were the defendant. He whispered, "Why haven't you killed me?" She didn't respond. She was unaware. Most people only knew him by the term ghost, which was whispered across the shadowy regions of space, but his real name was Ryan Vex. He was described in the records as a smuggler, a former soldier, and a drifter. However, others who had met him talked about something more, something inhuman. something that could not be killed. Calith hadn't believed the stories. So far, he shouldn't have made it through the Dekar 4 ambush. He shouldn't have been able to get away from the Ravager's Mercy's neural suppression field. And he most certainly shouldn't be that composed, bound and bleeding in front of her just before he dies. She gazed at him. He tilted his head casually, as though he was genuinely interested in her skill. Like he wasn't going to die. Her gaze flickered, and he saw it. "I understand your thoughts," Ryan remarked. "You're curious as to why I don't feel scared. Why I smile in the face of death." He gave the blade a nod. "It's because I've passed away already. Once, perhaps twice, and you would be aware of that if your records were important." Calith's hold became more firm. "You're not unique. You are merely another artifact from the disastrous battle on Earth, a leftover," Reen remarked. "Funny. You believe that the conflict is over. That's adorable." She cut. He ducked. Or more accurately, he moved, in a manner that shouldn't have been feasible. The chains broke. The sword fell to the ground with a bang. The force spread through the chamber like a shockwave. Ryan rushed forward, pushed her against the wall, and grabbed the falling sword in one hand in a single action. He muttered, his breath warm against her cheek. "Like I said, you're holding it incorrectly." The guards yelled. "Weapons up." With a growl, Calith pushed him away and slid away, grabbing her sidearm in the process. However, Ryan had already vanished. No sound, no thermal signature, no trace, only a rumble in the atmosphere. They shouted, "He's breached containment. Keep the command deck locked. Activate the internal sensors. Commander, I'm offline already." Heart thumping, Calith stood. He fell away. Not concealed, not shrouded. Simply gone. Similar to the tales. Similar to the tales they had rejected. Ghost wasn't a man. He was a message. Calith went over the security logs a few hours later. Not moving. Loops. Glitched video of her guards firing at nothing while backing away. Additionally, there was just one frame in which Ryan muttered the words, "You need to wake up," while staring at the camera. It wasn't sabotage. It served as a warning. That night, Calith didn't sleep. She researched. She searched the scant information the Emberan Empire had about him. There was more than battlefield gossip and combat documents. Files that were categorized were present. The transmissions were intercepted. Project EIDOLON is mentioned. Buried beneath the debris of the planet's final military records, this human augmentation project was long believed to be a hoax. Not all he was a soldier. He was created. It was 3 weeks lat. It was 3 weeks later. The Empire of Emberan consolidated its hold. In the border systems, rumors of revolt began to circulate. The responsibility of finding the instigator fell to Calith. She found a mining camp on Targan's Reach thanks to her intelligence. A barren place, hardly able to function, with dust storms capable of tearing flesh from bone. A peculiar signal in ancient Earth dialects was repeated by the outpost's beacons. "Hold the blade right." Then it happened again, and did it again. The storm hit her landing. Through the shattered spires, the wind howled like banshees. Miners gathered in groups, silently and wide-eyed, watching her approach. A young girl, perhaps 10 years old, came up and raised a stick. She said, "Is this right?" The stick was taken by Calith. Instinctively, her hand adjusted. Lowered the wrist, balanced the weight. The girl grinned. "That's what the ghost said." Calith sat by herself in her ship that night, repeatedly spinning the Anthelion blade in her hands. Her heartbeat was in sync with its buzz. Ryan was on her mind, His odd composure, his disappearance, his remarks. What did he mean when he said, "Wake up"? Was it a metaphor? Alert? Or something more profound? Something ingrained in Emberan doctrine that she had never thought to question? The console sent a ping, an encrypted, almost unintelligible message. 6 filters were applied by her. One line appeared. "You have a chance to live because of him." Kalith resigned and went back to Imperial space. An answer was required by the Empress herself. Kalith remained silent. She disappeared into the outer systems, leaving behind her armor and insignia. She followed the echoes there. They took her to an abandoned ship that was partially submerged in an asteroid field. She discovered him there once more. Ryan. Older. Weary. But with a smile on my face. "You located me," he remarked. "I didn't look," she said. "I was gaining knowledge." He arched an eyebrow. "And?" Kalith pulled out the blade of the Enthalion, kept it going. He moved forward and examined her hand. Nodded. He whispered, "You're holding it right now." They then entered the stars together. Slowly, their movement increased. Silently recruiting, Kalith and Ryan rekindled Earth-loyal colonies, freed former comrades, and blocked Emberan supply lines. They taught others how to look as well as how to fight, the way to ask questions, methods for waking up. She became into more than just a fighter. She turned into a representation, evidence that even Emberan perfection is subject to change. As they set up camp on a wrecked freighter over Ventros 9 late one evening, Kalith inquired, "Why me?" Ryan kept his eyes on his diagnostics. "Because you were hesitant. I became weak because of that." "No," he replied. "You became human because of that." They stood together in front of the Great Archive, the Empire's memory center, and an unfallen stronghold. During the last days of the Emberan era, the truth was inside. The actual past. Recordings of the Holocaust on Earth. Every Emberan creed contains lies. Commander Tavarik, Kalith's erstwhile tutor, was watching over it. The Tavarik snarled, "You embarrass yourself." "And for what purpose? A myth?" The Enthalion blade was in Kalith's hand, not shuddering. Without hesitation, completely still, she remarked, "I used to believe in you." Tavarik made a lunge. She moved out of the way. Like lightning, the sword moved. Silently and with pride, Rian watched as she put the blade to her mentor's throat and disarmed him. "Any final remarks?" she inquired. Tavarik scoffed. Stepping next to her, Ryan whispered in her ear, "He is holding it incorrectly." Kalith grinned. She then brought the blade down. He didn't have to be killed. The power of the truth was greater. According to legend, the Emberan Empire collapsed within a few weeks after the broadcast from the archive. According to some, the first peace crops were planted on New Earth using a plowshare made from the melted blade that Kalith used. She still carries it, according to others. She will also explain to you why she fights. Because I once learned how to hold it correctly from someone.